Okay,
Cool. Let's go.
welcome to the webinar today. Today's Unanet webinar is going to introduce you to validation stored procedures, or as we call them, VSPs, which are used for business rules enforcement. Now, this means if you have policy guidelines or other business rules specific for your company, you have a great way to enforce these in Unanet. This webinar is going to be perfect for those who are interested in learning more about this option for Unanet. Now today, if you have any questions, we ask you to type them into the questions box on your webinar dashboard, and we will review them all at the end. This webinar will be recorded and will be available within a week in case you want to review it again or have someone else on your team who would like to take a look. I am Stacy Ricola, and I'm part of the Customer Success Management team. Now, your Customer Success Manager is your main point of contact. We are here to help take the confusion out of who you need to contact when you have a question or if you have an issue. We also want to make sure that you're getting all the benefits of your Unanet license type. We do this by making sure that you get up to date added, and by scheduling customer success reviews, also known as account reviews, to assure that you are using all of the functionality currently available to you. And of course, you can reach out to us for additional licenses, license upgrades, and additional services. Now I would like to introduce our facilitator for today. We are happy to have Robin Zampella joining us, newlywed, from the Unanet University team. Are you ready to kick us off, Robin?
Hi, yes, thanks, Stacy. I'm still getting used to the Zampella myself. Thanks to everyone for joining us today. I am Robin Zampella, part of the Unanet University team, and I focus primarily on learning around financials functionality, and I'm going to be your facilitator today. Advance, please. There we go. Today's agenda is going to start out by defining business rules enforcement and validation stored procedures. We're going to look at some examples of the VSPs, see how it all works. Obviously, we'll look at the benefits also, and then we're going to wrap up by taking your questions at the end. So as Stacy mentioned, as we go through the webinar, please add your questions to the questions box on your webinar dashboard, and we're going to do our best to answer those at the end. And so now I'd like to introduce our presenter for today. We're happy to have Priya Gupta here from our Technology Services Group to lead us through our topic. So, and in case you didn't know, our Technology Services Group is part of the professional services organization here at Unanet. So now I'm going to turn it over to Priya to get us started. Priya, are you ready to jump right in?
Yep, as ready as I can be. Okay, so hello everybody, and today we are going to talk about business rule enforcement, or VSPs as we call them internally, the validation stored procedures. And I'm sure many of you must already be using validation stored procedures for your organizations. So there are two types of validation stored procedures. Some of them are in a way inbuilt validation stored procedures, or inbuilt validations that we have in Unanet. Like you can see, we can put conditions while creating a project that when it is used on a timesheet, comments need to be added to the timesheet for a particular project. And in case that part is not taken care of, then you will see a pop-up message which will tell the user that comments are missing and they need to be added for that particular project for that particular date. So those are like the inbuilt ones which can be customized through the product Unanet. But other than that, many clients have needs for additional validations that they want, which need to be customized according to their organization's needs. And that is when the validation stored procedures come into the picture. And we usually, so far, most of the time, we have been using them for time and expense reporting, and they get activated when a user clicks save or submit. And in case of save, we can show it in two ways. It can be either a warning to a user that something has happened which needs to be corrected as per the validations requested by the organization, or it can be an error which will not allow the user to proceed further. In case if it is a warning on save, then it will be more like an informational message that this thing has happened, which the organization is kind of warning the user that they need to take care of it, and they have the option to either fix it or not. If they don't fix it, they can proceed to submit. And when they're submitting, that time again, it can show up as a warning or it can not be there at all. In case the client decides to show it as an error, then it will be a red box which will appear with the message, and it will not allow the user to submit the timesheet till they have fixed that issue. So as we are showing, there can be three types of messages: informational messages, warning messages, or error messages. In case of error messages, they will not allow the user to submit the timesheet or the expense report till the problem has been fixed. Sorry, why is my button not working? Okay, so now the main question that comes into everybody's mind is, how do we connect the stored procedure to a client's Unanet? And this slide clearly shows you how that is done. So on your Unanet, the person who has admin rights on your Unanet will have this admin tab showing up on their Unanet, and you go into admin properties, and in this particular case for time, edit settings, and there you will see these two options: save stored procedure, submit stored procedure. Over here, for the save stored procedure, you enter the name of the stored procedure, which saves your time. And on the submit, similarly, you will enter the name of the stored procedure, which will get activated when you submit your time. So this is kind of the standard. So instead of ECME, it will most probably be an acronym of your organization's name. So this is the place how it connects your Unanet with your VSP. Advance, please. So the term VSP, when we are using that a client needs a VSP for their organization, it encapsulates the entire thing. So starting from the requirement phase to the actual coding to the actual testing. So everything is kind of part of a VSP. And the way it works is you need to work with your Unanet consultant, define your organization's needs, then they create a requirements document based on that, which will be passed on to the developers in Unanet, and they will create the validation stored procedure based on those requirements. We already have a library of some standard VSPs, which were created based on the majority needs that we saw, that the common needs most of the clients had. And the advantage of using the standard VSPs is that the turnaround time is very less compared to a custom VSP, because we already have the code in place, and the only things that will be changed on that are the configuration values based on your organization's Unanet setup. So we can talk more about the standard VSPs. Advance, please. So for example, minimum work week hours, that is again part of our standard library of VSPs. In this particular case, we notice that many clients have a need that they want their user to fill in a certain number of hours per work week in their timesheet. So in that case, we just have to configure the values that, these are the minimum number of hours that the client wants for a work week. And if the user has not put in that many hours, they will get a warning or an error depending on what the client wants. So similarly, we have standard VSPs for federal and state overtime laws. So again, if a person is working in a state where overtime laws are allowed, like a state like California, so over there they have these particular laws that a person is given 1.5 times their bill rate if they have worked more than 8 hours, and then double their bill rate if they have worked over a certain number of hours. So those things don't need to be manually checked in, we have already created a standard VSP for that, and any client who needs that can straight away use that standard VSP. We configure it according to your Unanet settings, and you're good to go. So the main advantage is that all the rules are in place, all the validations are in place. We already have the code created, the base code. It just needs to be configured, so the turnaround time is pretty quick for any client if they use any of the standard ones. But that doesn't mean that you have to stick to the standard ones. We overall have offer all or any kind of customizations that can happen on a timesheet or an expense report for any organization. So these are a few examples. So, if you want to not allow a user to change hours in a prior timesheet, or if you want to specify certain number of projects which can only have overtime allowed on them, those are some examples of custom VSPs that can be done, and it can be anything. So the way to do it is discuss it with your consultant and then create the requirements based on that, and then we can review the feasibility of the validations. Advance, please. So another example of a standard VSP that we have is the PTO overage. This has been pretty popular among clients. So most of the companies have allowed PTO time to their employees, but many companies do allow some overage above their allocated PTO time, but they also want an upper limit on that. So this VSP offers you the option of checking if the person has gone above their allowed PTO time, and then you can have an upper limit that, I want to allow my user to go 10 hours above their allocated PTO time, but not more than that. So, you have all the permutation combinations for PTO overage that can be built in for your needs. Then this is a standard one, but other than that, we can create any custom ones, as I told you. So our increments, you want the user to fill in timesheet in certain increments of hours, or you want a user to put in comments on your timesheet based on a task billing type or based on a pay code, or if they are charging to a non-billable project, then you want the text to explain why they're charging to a non-billable project. So, all those options can be built into your VSPs. Advance, please. Again, here are more examples of how you can customize your VSPs. So if you have a certain default project type set up and you do not want the user to go in and change that default type, then again, if the user does that and saves their timesheet, then a message can come in saying that you have changed the default type and please do not do that, or you're not allowed to do that. So you have a lot of combinations or a lot of flexibility basically with the custom VSPs that you can create according to your organization's needs. You can also provide informational messages if you want to show a user their billable hours or their chargeability. So all those options can be built into your organization's VSPs. Advance, please. So again, as I told you, we have two main areas in which we use the VSPs, time and expense. So in expense, we have various options where when a user is submitting an expense report, and if your organization does not want to allow them to submit really old expense reports like from previous years or something like that. So all that information can be built into a VSP. And if a user submits an expense report which is beyond a certain cutoff date, then they will get an error message saying that, sorry, you're not allowed to submit this expense report because it is beyond this time. Again, if you don't want them to allow them to submit future expense reports, you can have that option again built into your VSP. We already have one standard VSP for expense in place where it says that you cannot put in expense on time only tasks. So in your organization's Unanet, you can define certain tasks as only for time and only for expense. So if a person puts in time to puts an expense to a time-only task, then they will get an error. Or you can have it the other way around. If a person puts in time to an expense-only task, then also they can get an error. So this is again part of our standard VSP library. So the again advantage is that the turnaround time is pretty quick and it's tried and tested, and we just need to change it based on your Unanet configuration. But there are many other options. You can say we require comments on resubmit of an expense, or we want to check that no duplicate entries are created on the same day for the same expense. So all those validations can be built into your VSP. Advance, please. So in addition to time and expense, recently we have added another new VSP on the manager's time approval screen. So this is more like an informational VSP rather than a validation of any kind, because many times when a manager is approving multiple users' timesheets, instead of going through the timesheet through each and every project and each and every time entry, they want to see some information at a glance, which could be important for them to approve or not a timesheet. If they want to know how much overtime a user has spent in that particular time period, or how many hours were charged to a particular project. So all that information can be provided to the manager while approving the timesheet at a glance on that particular screen, and it will come up, it will show as a box above the timesheet, which will display any informational message about that user's timesheet for that particular time period. Advance, please. So why do we need VSPs, or what is the benefit of VSP for us? So the main benefit is that it reduces the accounting or the finance time, because when the user is actually filling their timesheet or their expense report, when they do a submit or a save, at that time, if you want to stop the user from doing any incorrect entries as per your organization's policies, at that time itself, they get a message that this is not allowed or you need to fix this. So at that time itself, they can make those changes instead of going through the entire review cycle when it will be rejected, and then it will come back again to the user to fix it. And again, there might still be issues which weren't caught the first time. So overall, it reduces the entire organization's turnaround time by a substantial amount, and it reduces time to complete your timesheets, and it can go to invoicing much more quickly. It can reduce the PM's approval time if you have that option of the manager time approval screen VSP, because at a glance they know what they are approving, and if they need changes in that at that time itself, they don't have to go through each and every line in the timesheet, which can be like 10 or 20 lines at times if a person is working on multiple projects. And it reduces the number of adjustments a user has to make, because if he's being stopped at the submit state itself, then he can fix his timesheet before it going to the approval state. And of course, it provides clarity to the employee, because in the message, we can be as detailed as you want. We can say on this date for this project, you have entered this many hours. Instead, it needs to be this many hours. So, we can provide any level of detail in the message that is required when the user is saving or submitting their timesheet or expense reports. Advance, please.
Okay, time for our demo. Thank you, Priya. That's all awesome information. So let me go ahead and make you the presenter so that you can show us how this works in the system.
Sounds good. Okay. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Looks great.
Okay, great, thank you. So now this is our test environment. And this is the kind of screen a person who has admin rights on the Unanet will see. So they will have an admin tab on their Unanet. You click on that and then go into admin properties, in this case time, and then under time, edit settings. So if you go to edit settings and you scroll down, you will see these two options over here, save stored procedure and submit stored procedure. And over here, you have to put in the exact name of your save and submit stored procedures, which have been created especially for your organization. So in this case, MICO is the name of the organization. This is kind of our standard. This is the place where we add the name of the client, whoever owns that stored procedure. You do that, put in the names, scroll down, click on save, and now your stored procedure is linked to your Unanet. Now you go into the People tab. Over here, I'm going to go for this person, VSP semi-monthly. And if I look at this person has a location of Virginia, is an employee type HR. I'm looking at his time tab and it shows me that he has a time period of semi-monthly. Now, if I want to go ahead and fill this person's timesheet, you go down to the person, click on this hourglass, which will allow you to fill the timesheets. And this is a timesheet for this person for the time period of 5/16 to 5/31. Over here, I have right now filled all his time as regular time with pay code RT. Now, if I go ahead and add one over here and do a save, I'm getting this error message in red, which says you may not record to the overtime pay code on your timesheet when working fewer than 40 regular hours in a week. Please update your time for the work week ending 5/26/2018. So I know this work week is ending 5/26, and although this adds up to 8, but the weekly time is 39 regular hours and 1 time overtime, which is not allowed as per this organization's policies. So to fix this, I need to put this as 8. And one more quick thing, let me show you. So on save, I get this message. And if I say that, I want to ignore it, and I go ahead and try to submit it, even on submit, it will not allow me to proceed because this is an error as per the company's policy. They do not want any user to be able to submit a timesheet in this condition. So I don't have an option. I have to go back to edit and I have to fix the problem. So now if I put in 8 hours of regular time and 1 hour of overtime and save this, so now I'm not getting any errors. And now if I try to submit it, so my timesheet has been submitted successfully now. So this is kind of a small demo of how the VSPs come into the picture for your Unanet. So Robin?
Fantastic. Yeah, fantastic. So we are going to go back over to our slides.
Yes.
And there we are. Go ahead.
So now the main question that comes into our mind is, I want a VSP, and how do I go about it? What do I need to do? So you need to work with your Unanet consultant to discuss your needs, and then they will write a requirements document based on your needs, review the requirements document with you, bring it to the developers team. The developer will assess the requirements, come up with an LOE, a level of effort for the work defined in the requirements document, and the LOE will be approved by the client. Then the developer will begin work on that. They will develop the VSP, deliver it, test it, do the user acceptance testing for the client, and then you're all set. Your VSP is in place for your Unanet.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Priya. That is, I just think it's such great logic. When I was a Unanet customer, we had a VSP that required, expense report attachments on any line item over $25 as an example, to enforce our policy. So they've been around for a long time and definitely a great addition to our existing software. So let's see if we have any questions in our questions box. Stacy, do we have any questions?
Yes, we do. And please, if you do have a question, it's not too late. Just go ahead and type it in. But Priya, our first question is, what if I have more than one stored procedure? How do you address that?
Yep, that's a very common situation. Most of the clients definitely have more than one stored procedure. And if I forgot to mention this, you can always have a combination of standard and custom validations within the same VSP. It doesn't mean that you have to, if you want a standard, you have to be go with only the standard ones or only the custom ones. It can be a permutation combination of anything. It can be time plus expense or time plus time approval screen. So, but all your validations will be called through a single, will all be collated into a single stored procedure for time and a single separate stored procedure for expense, and again in a single separate stored procedure for manager approval screen VSP, and they will all be called through the same name. So the only thing that needs to be set up is in your admin properties, edit settings for time or expense, and where that name needs to be added over there, which will collate all your validations in the same procedure.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So can a person send an email through the stored procedure if there is an issue or an error?
We want to contain the validation to the UI itself, so we do not allow stored procedures to go out of the realm of the system in a way. So whatever messages you want your user to see will all be displayed on your Unanet itself. So it does not allow any external things to come into the picture, kind of thing.
Okay, thank you. And actually, here are a couple that I can address being on the CSM team. One question is, do we contact our success manager to get in touch with a consultant? And yes, you do. If you are an existing customer that you have transitioned to your customer success manager, like you're out of your implementation phase and you're using Unanet and you've transitioned, yes, you do reach out to your CSM to talk to them about the stored procedure. And then there is another question, is there a cost involved to develop a VSP? And yes, there is a cost involved. Priya, someone's asked a ballpark range, price range.
Right. So I think we would, every situation is different. So we would, again, have them reach out to the CSM to see what they're looking for, and then we can get back to that individual with the pricing.
Okay. Very good. And then there's a lot of questions coming in now. If I am already working with a consultant on something else, can I just work with him directly? Robin, do you want to address that one?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, if you're already working with them on something else, now your VSP would be out of scope with whatever you're currently working on, but certainly you can talk with them, about adding that on, as an additional thing. And since they're already familiar with your system and your processes, it would make sense to work with them on the requirements for the VSP. Yep.
Okay. And is there a VSP to require expense attachments to be in PDF format?
We don't have a standard VSP for that, but as I told you, we can build a custom VSP for expense time, anything as per your needs. So that would have to be a custom VSP request.
So we could require, so just you only want it in PDF, so we could do that. That's pretty cool.
Right. I'll have to kind of review that. We do have an option to allow attachments, but I'm not sure what is the format of that we allow, because, again, it's not a standard one, it's a custom one. And sometimes clients request things like that, but not very frequently.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this one is tricky. In order to add a VSP to prevent time being charged to an expense charge code, how does an admin designate that task as an expense, or is that specified in the code?
It's not specified in the code. You can do that through your Unanet settings. So, I can look it up and send you an email about that information, but we don't, basically through the code, we don't change anything on your Unanet settings. We don't do any changes to the database. It's just validating. It's just validating the information that the user has entered. And based on that information, we just let them know that this is incorrect or this is correct.
And I want to say, this is Robin, I want to say in our product roadmap, Stacy, didn't Dave talk to us about that in a coming soon release of Unanet, that we would be able to enforce time entry or expense entry against at the task level and not just the project level? I believe that that's coming down the pike.
Yes, you're correct.
So this is the way that a lot of people do it now, where you set up your task and maybe you name it expense, but right now you can't prevent people from charging time to it without a VSP. And many people do that currently. In the future, you'll be able to do that using the system settings.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's all the questions that we have. Thank you, Priya.
And if there are any that come in, after the fact, or please feel free to continue to put your questions in, and then we can get back to you. Your CSM team will get back to you following the webinar. Take it away, Stacy.
Thank you. Now, for any other questions, including for VSPs, please reach out to your customer success manager. And thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you also to Robin for her help in facilitating, and to Priya for everything we needed to know about enforcing business rules using validation store procedures. Once again, this webinar presentation will be available within a week. And for those of you who we needed to follow up with, you should see those responses soon. So thanks again for joining us today.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Stacy. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.